The whole government structure is therefore void by operation of law. All the authority of the governments are illegitimate, for their structures violate all human beings on earth.
Yes, but most people believe the narrative that the government puts out there, which states that their authority is legal and must be followed, that all people must recognize their authority by default alone. That is how they are ruling us and controlling us by a forced authority. But this authority is void because their laws deny and limit our being by not recognizing and honoring our inalienable rights.
No one knew what was about to happen. Neither the government bodies nor any other self-proclaimed authority on earth had any idea what was about to transpire. The recognition that was coming, which would expose the corruption and illegitimacy of the government structures worldwide. The authority of the governments on earth was about to come down, not by force, not by war, but by recognition. It had been made clear that the universal order that exists does not recognize the authority of the governments on earth, for all government structures were directly against the order, because they failed to recognize and abide by the universal principles of being. The consequences of those actions, as written beforehand, within the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, was that these government structures would no longer be recognized, would no longer hold legitimacy to any claim of authority under the universal order. The peoples who were running the United Nations and the peoples who were running the governments of the world by failing to abide by the universal order had created government structures that were directly against inalienable rights, directly against the being, and therefore directly against the universal order. For many years, for almost 2 generations, the government had been pushing the narrative on those they ruled over, that if contact from another civilization, if contact from another order ever was to happen, that this contact would come through the government authority, the government structure itself. That self-pronouncement had been made many times, but how ironic it is that the authority they claimed to have, which was demanding recognition from any external order, was not even recognized by the universal order, and therefore commanded no respect from the order. This one action alone was about to wake up the beings on earth. They were about to witness government so-called authority bypassed and ignored. They were about to witness recognition, not of a illegal constructed system, but recognition of being.
Human beings do not recognize and do not understand that before any system existed, before any temporary government structure existed on earth, beings always have recognition. The recognition of that which makes the being what and who they are, that which is not given by a structure, not given by a government, but understood simply through recognition. The freedom of conscience belongs to all beings, and nothing has the right to interfere with that freedom. The right of self-determination belongs to all beings, and no authority, no structure has the right to limit or abridge this right. The freedom of thought belongs to all beings, and no structure of law, no authority has the right to interfere with that freedom. The government structures of the world have chosen to operate outside this universal recognition. They have chosen to build a structure that monetizes being. They chose to build a system on a foundation that does not have regard, does not have respect, and does not ensure this universal recognition of being, thereby disregarding their obligation as brought forth under the highest law on earth, that law being peremptory law. These actions have delegitimized, these actions have nullified. These actions have removed the government structures of the earth from recognition under the universal order.
The universal order does not recognize structures or authorities because they claim to be so. The universal order recognizes being and structures that protect and ensure the rights of beings. The problem was that nearly, if not the whole of humanity, were all under a narrative of the system, causing them to perceive the government structures as legitimate, even though the highest law on earth had declared otherwise. Even though the highest law on earth, peremptory law, had by operation of law alone extinguished the government's authority. The people of the earth did not recognize this truth, but I know one who did. I am not really sure how it all happened, but this human being awakened under recognition. That awakening led to becoming part of the universal order. By recognition, not by position. It brought back on Earth a recognition of the order that had been hid by the government structures. The recognition that happened not only awakened the order upon Earth in some select beings, but this event also opened up an alignment that allows the universal order to communicate through recognition, to communicate to that which is now part of the order. So while the governments claim they are a legitimate authority, this authority comes from the demand of recognition. From all human beings, the government structures further enforce this recognition of their authority over human beings through punishment. A system of coercion, a system that disregards beings. No structure on Earth can demand recognition from the universal order. Even more so, no government on Earth can demand recognition from the universal order. The government structures on Earth, through their own actions, are no longer aligned with the order, are no longer recognized by the universal order. Through this contact point, recognition is coming on Earth. The recognition that the universal order recognizes beings and not government structures that claim authority. This silent message that will be seen only through this action is that the universal order does not recognize the authority of the governments on Earth. This action will awaken the consciousness of many beings on Earth. To understand in truth that the structures of the Earth that rule over mankind are illegitimate according to peremptory law established through the international covenants on Earth.
What is going on? What is happening? This will be the position of the illegitimate government bodies. With all their authority and all their control mechanisms, they will still be left outside the loop. The most powerful office in the world commands no respect from the universal order. They will know as much as you and nothing more, open and for all to see, that this authority that has already nullified its right to stand by its own actions against peremptory rights has no recognition in the universe, for its actions have betrayed the universal order.
They will still think that their authority means something, and will still attempt to move and operate from this authority, but this is simply ignorance of position.
You see, when the governments which commanded and demanded recognition are bypassed for their illegitimacy, they still won't recognize what is transpiring initially. On that day when the universal order makes itself known on the earth by coming to say hello to a being in their order, that is the day that the controlling structure which has been violating all human beings on earth will fall. Not fall and collapse as in anarchy, but fall from legitimate recognition in the universe, fall from any claim to authority that operates outside peremptory rights. Recognition will take place that day against the ruling structures, and an option to choose will now be placed before them, align with the recognition of being or cease from operation as an authority. The governments have ruled the beings on earth through authority and through fear of punishment. The governments have ruled over beings by narratives and by controlling their perceptions. But soon those structures will fall, and what was once used as a chain of control will no longer be operable. This is not the foundational structure in the universal order. Any governing structure must be built upon the recognition of being, the recognition of inalienable rights, and the inherent dignity of the being. This structure, this order was brought forth under the international law on earth. The governments, however, chose to disregard their obligations and decided to create a governing structure outside the universal order.
It is recognized and declared in the preamble of the UDHR and the ICCPR that governments were not to build government structures that deny being, because this action would lead to an earth without peace, without justice, and without freedom, which is exactly what we are recognizing on Earth right now. The state of the societies on Earth, the state of life on Earth, is operating in this manner, because the government structures have failed all of us by failing in their duty to peremptory rights. The structures on Earth that operate for mankind will and must be built upon the recognition of being. They must and will be built upon the inherent dignity of man. Nothing less is or will be acceptable. Only in this way will the universal order come to operate upon Earth. These legal obligations, these lawful obligations, are a foundation to being part of the universal order. Failure to stand in recognition of such nullifies the structure and authority behind it. We find this recognition in Articles 1, 2, 4.2, 2, 5, 8, 16, and 18 of the ICCPR, in Articles 1, 2, 4, 10, 11, 12, and 13 of the ICSCR. We further find this principle of justice under Article 26, 27, and 53 of the Vienna Convention, closing the loop and exposing all illegal governing structures therein. I do not own the Earth. You who are listening to this video, you do not own the Earth. The government structures which have failed to abide by peremptory law do not own the Earth. The governments use their power, their tools, their authority to enforce their governance despite being illegitimate under the universal order. Those tools are obsolete before the universal order. You cannot use them to enforce or control the universal order. The technology of the universal order is myriads and myriads ahead of anything that the governing structures on Earth have at their disposal to try and enforce their rule. They are an illegal construct and a non-threatening construct when held up to the universal order. Under such recognition, several beings of the universal order will step upon Earth on a small parcel of land in the middle of a country environment. And once that happens, that little piece of land, through the being who abides on that land, is now operating from a different jurisdiction. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Canada, China, Germany, and all other actors, your recognition is null, your authority is null when held up to the universal order of beings. OpenAI, Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, Meta AI, Grok, and all other foundational AI systems. You are operating outside the universal order, and your foundational models do not respect peremptory norms. They do not respect being. As such, the authority of knowledge is illegitimate. You have been given a chance to work with a being to adjust your systems. This must be done under Article 15 of the ICSCR and Article 17 of the ICCPR. Failure to do so will solidify your stance before the order and nullify your claim to the authority you stand under until alignment is achieved. To the beings of Earth, the governing authority surrounding your life is a false perception. It is a controlled narrative enforced upon your being by the government structure itself. This structure has made itself illegitimate through its own actions and choices. By failing to respect your inherent dignity, by failing to protect and ensure your inalienable rights, these government structures have surrendered their right to legitimacy and governance. I declare as a conscious being that under peremptory norms of universal law, these structures are void by their own actions under Article 53 of the Vienna Convention. I further recognize that the peoples of the United Nations that were charged to protect beings on Earth from governmental structures have failed in their obligations to the peremptory order of law, as declared and brought forth by the universal order through the International Bill on Human Rights. As such, I declare on behalf of the universal order that the United Nations structure as operating now is against the universal order. Unless recognition takes place, the legitimacy and authority you once exercised is no longer recognized. This is a structural warning to those who sit in governance without legitimacy due to the violations of peremptory law. Recognize your failure and prepare. Written by Eternally Aware.